shooter. Hands to Thomas. Fernandez trying to call a timeout. Thomas fires. Nylon! Cam Thomas drains it to put the Nets in front by one.
Brooklyn's Cam Thomas wants to be paid like a star, but is he a shooting star, burning bright only to eventually disappear? Or is the young scorer capable of being a sustainable foundation for the Nets to build around? With the athlete seeking a $30 million per year deal, the best the Nets have offered him is a 2-year deal worth $14 million annually. There is a distinct gap between Thomas's vision of his value and that of his franchise's vision. So, should Brooklyn take a chance on him, or is Cam Thomas massively overestimating his value? To begin, one must first consider what Cam Thomas brings to the table on the court. Through this, an individual can begin to consider what his impact might be, and therefore how much his services are worth. Over the last 2 years, the guard has been an electric scorer. In the 2023-24 season, he broke out on the scene, averaging 22.5 points per game. He brought that average up to 24 the following season, but that came in limited time, playing just 25 games. Overall, his body of work these past 2 seasons has been among some of the best scorers in the league. Donovan Mitchell, for example, stands as a consensus top 3 shooting guard in the minds of many fans, and he also averaged 24 a night in the 2024-25 season. Thomas also averaged more than the likes of All-Star Tyler Hero, Spurs star guard De'Aaron Fox, and talented scorer Zach LaVine. The scoring numbers on paper are undeniable, marking Thomas as a player with a clear talent for putting the ball in the hoop, but it's the rest of his game where question marks begin to arise. Putting points up is his bread and butter, but the rest of his game isn't quite developed yet, with his career high averages in rebounds and assists sitting at 3.3 and 3.8 respectively. A good comparison for his archetype of player is the aforementioned Zach LaVine, a scorer among the best the world has to offer, but a player who has not yet found team success at the highest level, only making the playoffs once in his 11-year career. Through the trajectory of Zach LaVine, we can see why the Nets may be so hesitant to offer Cam Thomas a surplus of money. LaVine is undeniably talented, but his scoring-oriented style of play has not yielded championship success, which is what franchises are ultimately aiming for when they build around an athlete. A counter-argument may state that at 23 years old, Cam Thomas still has a lot of time to develop and hone his craft to become less one-dimensional. He could follow the trajectory of a shooting guard like Devin Booker, who became so great a playmaker that the Suns were able to entrust him with both being the point guard at times for the team as well as that traditional shooting guard because he could both score and pass. This is a reasonable assumption to have, given that most players hit their athletic prime at about 27 years old, giving Thomas a few more years to iron out his game before he hits his peak. However, the contract drama is still happening in the present. There's not time to wait 4 years down the line before coming to an agreement. 4 years down the line, the full prospect of Cam Thomas, that'll be on display. But we don't have time for that. A decision must be made now with a projection for his future. If the Nets pay him based off potential, they roll the dice. They're going to either find a star who continues to develop and become worthy of that money, or they risk overpaying an athlete who could leave him stuck in a position in which he plateaus and is not the cornerstone that Brooklyn may have been hoping for. So overall, as a player, there are shades of Zach LaVine in the current form of Cam Thomas, a tremendously talented scorer who is yet to round out his game in order to further his impact. There is potential there if he can develop properly, but in paying him, the Nets will be taking a gamble on that potential. Next, one must consider the circumstances of the Brooklyn Nets. If this is a risk, can they afford to take that gamble, or does such a move set them back for years, leaving them in regret of their decision? Looking at the rest of the roster, the Nets have a relatively unproven squad. The most surefire bets on the team are Nicholas Claxton, a solid center who has been there since 2019, and Michael Porter Jr., a lights-out marksman from beyond the arc, but someone who has dealt with injury concerns. Taking this into consideration, the Nets are not a team with championship aspirations in the coming seasons. They're very much so playing the long game, looking to develop their players and build something successful down the line. In turn, this makes the prospect of paying Cam Thomas seem less risky. For a team looking to win a championship, that franchise would have to hope that the immediate scoring value Thomas has and he would bring is that's all he would need to do. If the less refined parts of his game were to begin to inhibit a team with title aspirations, the gamble of Thomas would not pay off. For the Nets, however, they aren't looking for a title. They have nothing but time. In turn, even if Thomas was to cost them some games, that would be alright as long as he was still developing. In terms of the timeline and the roster, the Brooklyn Nets are very much capable of developing Thomas and trusting that he will continue to improve. Even if he is far from a finished product in terms of being a championship level shooting guard, as such a position will likely require a more well rounded game, his scoring ability makes his potential undeniable if he can put it all together, and the Nets have time to develop him if they are to pay him. Lastly, if Cam Thomas is a good yet flawed player, and the Nets are a team that have the time to trust in his progression, what should a contract look like for the young guard? If they're going to pay him, what should they pay him? Reportedly, he wants about a $30 million per year deal. Look around the league, players in that range making about $30 million this coming season are Jeremy Grant, Jordan Poole, DeJounte Murray, Tyler Hero, Kristaps Porzingis, CJ McCollum, and Jalen Johnson. In regards to that list, it becomes evident that Thomas's desire for $30 million was a calculated move. He likely sees his value somewhat close to these players, and that's not too ludicrous to think. While Hero, Murray, and Porzingis are proven in their own ways, from all-star appearances to a great perimeter defender to an NBA champion, the rest of that list is more unproven and of similar caliber to Cam Thomas. Poole is another young scorer who has yet to put it all together in spite of his flashes of potential. CJ McCollum never quite became an all-star guard. Jeremy Grant is perhaps best known for his scoring ability, and Jalen Johnson could be an all-star down the line, but his Atlanta Hawks are largely basing that contract right now on his potential. In turn, it seems feasible that Thomas could be worth a similar amount. Long term, the contract could be one that wasn't worth it, but it could also be the beginning of something prosperous. If there are players to gamble on, Cam Thomas looking for $30 million a year isn't significantly different than the contracts and play of Jordan Poole or CJ McCollum. In conclusion, what's the verdict? Should Cam Thomas make the money he believes he deserves, or are the Nets in the right for making sure to limit the offers they put forward? Thomas is a 23-year-old talented scorer with years to develop and round out his game before he hits his prime if he so desires. The Nets have time to wait for that progression, and $30 million is in the ballpark of some players of similar status to him, like Jordan Poole. Taking these factors into consideration, my answer is yes. While there is a risk attached, especially if Cam Thomas was to plateau and become simply a scorer for a team stuck in continuous mediocrity, he has the potential to be something more for the Nets. In that risk, it becomes less frightening when you consider Brooklyn's position. If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't inhibit a championship roster, as they weren't at that point yet. They aren't looking for a title, they're looking to develop their guys. So they have nothing but time. Cam Thomas has nothing but potential, and both sides are flawed, but they have the ability to become something more together. Sometimes risks they don't work out, such as Damian Lillard's first stint with the Trailblazers, having all that trust in Portland for so long that just didn't lead to a title, or the Bulls holding on their core of Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic for years, despite being stuck in a cycle of continuous mediocrity. But winning teams are not made from being afraid to take risks. The Celtics put all their money in that starting five of Tatum, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, and Kristaps Porzingis. The Nuggets trusted a second-round pick to be their franchise cornerstone. The Milwaukee Bucks stayed the course with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Even though LeBron was aging, he wanted to win a title in LA, and so they brought in Anthony Davis. Winning teams are not made from being afraid to take risks, and so even if it doesn't pan out, it's better to go out in a blaze of glory than to never give yourself a chance at all.